A police officer was seriously hurt while following a car full of criminals. He finally had a very bad seizure, and the doctor was about to declare him dead. The dog eventually noticed something strange and stopped him. The next thing that happened was the most loyal thing you've ever seen. Sergeant Corey Masterson had his arms around the Crown Vic steering wheel, and the sirens were on. He was following these bad guys for almost 15 minutes. In the middle of town, they avoided him, but afterwards, they were on the interstate, where they were less likely to hurt harmless people. The game was fair. He looked at the SUV in front of him and then quickly at his dog Reno in the back seat, in the rear view mirror. The Belgian Malinois was sitting up straight, his ears were perked up, and his smart eyes were on the chase. All of a sudden, the criminal's SUV took a sharp turn left. It went straight ahead and then stopped on the side of the road. All 4 doors of the car opened, and the thieves jumped out, running into the trees along the interstate. Corey looked Reno straight in the eyes and said, "Boy, stay here for now." Then he got out of his police car, pulled out his gun, and ran to where the criminals had gone into the woods. They were in the trees, but Corey couldn't hear or see them. He slowly moved deeper into the woods, crabbing sideways to see everything. He did this with his gun raised and all of his senses on high alert. As soon as the blow hit, his whole world went into slow motion. Corey knew he had been attacked as he fell to the ground. His mind was on the fact that he had been hit in the back of the head with something heavy and was fast losing consciousness. Before the screen went black, the last thing Corey did was press the button that would open the car door and let Reno out so he would be safe. The moment the door opened, Reno moved quickly. It was his nose that told him where to go. He could see Corey lying still on the ground between the trees with a big man sitting on his stomach. The man was getting ready to stab Corey with a huge knife in his hands. Reno sped up twice as fast. He quickly and swore under his breath that he was going to kill both Corey and Reno. He then charged. He had the 2x4 he had picked up in one hand and the knife in the other. Reno met him in the middle, with the dog tucked under a 2x4 that was swinging freely, harder, and then grabbed the guy's arm just below the elbow. The bad guy snarled and tried to shake Reno off, but the dog fought back and tightened his grip with his strong neck muscles. The thief finally got down on one knee. He put down the 2x4 and pulled out a knife to attack Reno. The dog kept ducking out of the way, though. He had to let go of the criminal's arm in order to do this. The man used the chance to get back on his feet and then ran into the woods. Reno turned around and ran right to Corey. The most important thing was that he felt his friend wasn't in a good place. Behind him, Reno could hear people. He ran toward the sounds because his nose could still pick up everything around him. It was a second police car that had been listening in on the radio and finally arrived to help. From the precinct, the 2 cops knew Reno and followed him to Corey. Things didn't look good when they got to the hospital. The doctors ordered a bunch of tests and started working on Corey right away. Reno and another cop went home, but Reno was awake the whole night. He was already by the car when Corey's coworker came out of the house in the morning. Reno was thinking about only one thing. He needed to get to Corey right away. He didn't know if his friend wished for him to be at the hospital or not. The doctor told the bad news. The blow to the back of Corey's head had broken his skull badly, and there was also bleeding in his brain. He was not awake, and time would tell if he would ever wake up. They wouldn't let Reno into the ICU, so he was left lying outside the emergency room door. Once more, Corey's fellow cop came out. Reno quickly searched the area for Corey but couldn't find him. "Where's Corey?" he seemed to ask as he tilted his head and looked at Corey's coworker. Reno slid into the back seat of the police car. He seemed to know what was going on. After 3 months, it was decided that Corey should be sent home, even though he was still in a coma. Everyone hoped that being in a place he knew would help him wake up. Care had been planned for 24 hours a day, and the whole precinct was there to help lead the ambulance to Corey and Reno's house. Reno sat down next to Corey's bed and stayed there all day. Something wasn't quite right for Reno on a Thursday morning around 5 a.m. Something was wrong with Corey, but the dog wasn't sure what it was. He took off and scratched at the door where Corey's caretaker was sleeping. She woke up because of the noise and followed Reno to Corey's room. Corey was awake. He was back. Corey had his eyes open and focused. First, he looked at Reno. He said, "Hello, boy." He held down one arm and touched the dog's head, even though it was weak and almost limp. Corey's return was slow and hard over the next few months. His muscles had atrophied from being on his back for months, making it hard for him to walk. He would need training for many months before he could get up and move around again. The terrible thing happened one night. Corey tried to get up to use the bathroom. Reno woke up right away and was ready to follow him, but the dog was feeling alert and saw that something wasn't right. It wasn't always a smell, and it wasn't always a sound either. He felt like there was something in the air that made him very alert. Reno turned his head to the side and looked at Corey very carefully. His friend was now standing, but he was still very loose. The next second, Corey's face changed into a painful look. He tightened his jaw and it looked like his eyes were sticking out of his head. Reno ran quickly down the hall to the caregiver's room. He growled, barked, and scratched until he could hear people moving in the room. He then ran back to Corey's room down the hall. Corey had already fallen and his body was still shaking. There was a small layer of foam on the corners of his mouth. The caretaker walked into the room and took over. She whispered something to Corey and put a pillow under his head to support his neck, then slowly turning him over on his side. She felt for his pulse and heard him breathe. Then she called the doctor. The doctor looked at Corey when he got there and then shook his head. He turned around and spoke quickly to the nurse. The room felt sad all around. They seemed and talked like Corey was dead. There were many times during Reno's service when he saw people act like this after someone had died. But Reno had no idea what it meant. The doctor thought Corey was dead, but Reno knew he wasn't. When an ambulance was brought up to take Corey's limp body away, Reno went into full battle mode. He stood on top of Corey and had two legs on each side. He then pulled his lips back to show his teeth and growled in a scary way. It turned the growl into a snarl every time someone got close. It went on for over an hour. After that, another hour went by. The doctor called the cops and asked them to send someone to get the dog so that Corey's body could be taken away. The captain himself showed up at the scene. He looked at Reno's feet when he saw him standing over Corey's dead body. He told the doctor that it would not be easy. Reno and Corey had been friends for 7 years and had a bond that was hard to break. Reno saw everything happen right in front of him. He had to show them they were wrong in some way. He knew Corey wasn't dead. He could feel it. Corey didn't have a heartbeat or a breath. The doctor told the captain he was dead and no amount of CPR could save him now. But Corey began to cough while he was talking. Reno stood off to the side, but he kept a close eye on the captain and the doctor. The doctor told the whole country on TV the next morning that he had seen something very rare called the Lazarus effect. Even though Corey looked like he was dead, he was actually having a serious seizure because of his head injury. The doctor could have needed some time to figure out, but the dog knew his human Corey was still alive the whole time. Corey got better with his loyal friend by his side. Reno would always look out for him, once again showing the loyalty of dogs and their love for people, and how far they are willing to go to save their beloved human. Do you know any similar stories? Do you have a dog? Let us know in the comments below.